Hello, Spink here. This is episode 3 of my Let's Play of AGEOD Civil War 2. I think this episode, first thing before we get into moving our units around and doing everything, I'm going to talk a little bit about the big picture. What do I need to do to win, lose, and how is that tracked? And for that, what you're going to be looking at is basically three things. You have your national morale, your victory points, and your foreign entry. And all of these can be found, in addition to being up here, can be found on the objectives tab of the strategic atlas. The foreign entry value determines when or whether and when the European nations, Great Britain and France, intervene on behalf of the Confederacy. This scale goes from negative 100 to positive 100. If it ever gets to positive 100, then Great Britain and France will intervene on behalf of the Confederacy. If it ever gets to negative 100, then they have completely given up on the Confederacy's ability to preserve their independence and will not intervene at all at that point. So if it hits either one of these two values, it ceases to be a function in the game any longer. The value can be increased or decreased through various government actions that you do. There's only two at the beginning, neither of which you would actually pick. These are kind of your last-ditch desperation ones. But in the next turn or so, the Union will get the option to declare a blockade of the Confederacy, and this will have a chance to move this value by negative 15, move it down by 15. The Confederacy will have an option to declare an embargo of cotton, withhold the cotton from the European powers, and that can make it go up as well. There are various other things, the trade concessions and territorial concessions and whatnot, that can make that go up and down as well, depending on which side you're playing, obviously. They do have a cost. This one costs 7 morale points, national morale, $10,000, 100 victory points, $50,000 for morale, 50 victory points. So you're going to have to determine whether or not it's worth the cost that they are. Another thing that causes them to go up and down is the national morale and the victory points totals for each side. Currently we have 90 national morale and the Confederacy has 100. Whichever side has the higher value in national morale on each turn, there is a 50% chance that the foreign intervention value will have 1 point in their favor. And that works also for the victory points. We currently have 50 victory points. The Confederacy has 50 victory points. We're gaining 39 a turn. They're gaining 49 a turn. So very quickly they're going to outpace us. Whichever side has the higher victory point total on each turn has a 50% chance of moving the foreign entry in their favor by one point. So it's going to slowly trickle towards the side that's doing better, in addition to these decisions you can take to move it bigger chunks at a time. And that's foreign intervention. The big thing that foreign intervention is going to do for you, if you look at the combat power here of the various nations, the first value is their land force and the second value is their naval force. And you can see Great Britain has 169 naval power and France has 92 naval power, and you can see that their land power is not great, although the Great Britain is about the same as the Confederacy at this point. But it's their naval power that's gonna have the big influence should they intervene. They're gonna break your blockade. You're gonna have naval battles, and then eventually there's gonna be invasions of the north. I've never seen this happen, but common sense tells me that's what's going to happen, and as the Union player, you're not going to want that to happen. So you're going to want to keep an eye on this value and make sure it doesn't get to 100. The other one we have here is national morale. This is the feeling in the support for the war, essentially, of your populace. Currently it's at 90. If this should ever get to 200, we win instantly. If it should ever get to 40, drop to 40, we lose instantly. And the Confederacy has the same thing going on with them. If theirs gets to 200, they win. If theirs drops to, I believe, 25 is where their defeat level is. So we're going to have to put a bigger hurt on them than they are of us. National morale can go up or down based on various scripted historical events that happen. For instance, the Trent Affair will happen later on in 1861, and there will be, I believe, some national morale effects from that. It can also be affected by battles. Winning battles tends to make your national morale go up. Losing battles tends to make your national morale go down. The larger the battle, the more likelihood that it will affect the national morale. Your small skirmishes and whatnot generally aren't going to have an impact on national morale. Holding or gaining and losing objective cities will impact your national morale. If you lose your capital, 50 is going to be taken from your national morale. As you can see, we lose at 40 points. We currently have 90. Right now, if we lost our capital, it's game over. We've lost. So, obviously, Washington is a huge thing that we absolutely cannot lose. So we're going to have to make sure, above all else, that we hold Washington. Now, the objective cities here will show up on the strategic town overlay. As we see here, these are the strategic towns, and this is going to tie in with victory points, which we haven't talked about, but we're going to start now. For every one of these strategic towns that you hold, you get one victory point per turn. The ones in blue that flash, or the ones that flash, not necessarily the ones in blue, the ones that flash, these are not only objective cities or strategic cities, these are objective cities. These are the ones that show up on this tab right here. These are the ones that you actually have a national morale gain or loss for holding or not. And the victory points that you gain or lose from these particular ones can range from 1 to 3 that you gain per turn from holding these towns. I don't know if it actually lists them anywhere. It's in the manual that says that these are that range from 1 to 3. I don't see one that says what they actually are. But these are how you gain victory points through holding these cities. Each turn your victory point level is going to go up. So if we look at back to here, we'll see our victory point total is going up 39 a turn, and that's because of the strategic cities that we hold. See, it's right here, changes per turn from objectives only 39. So that's how you gain and lose. Gain. Anyway, you gain victory points through that. Another way that you gain victory points is by destroying enemy units. You don't lose victory points if your units are destroyed, but you gain the other side would gain the victory points for your units being destroyed, and that refers to both the entire unit, like this brigade, and also the individual elements within it. So if the 1st Maryland regiment within this brigade was completely destroyed and removed, the other side, the Confederacy, would gain a victory point for that. I'm not, possibly just one, I'm not sure. Also, I don't know, I haven't seen anything in the manual that says that this is for combat losses only. If you were to take one of your armies and put them out into an unsupplied situation and they all wasted away due to starvation, I don't know that the other side does not gain victory points for that. I'm operating on the assumption that they do. I'm not gonna certainly give them any free victory points. One of the things that you actually do, these are your victory points in your national morale. They're not just something that affects your victory, but you actually end up using them as a currency to pick various options in your need to gain money, or we've seen this one over here, the trade concessions. This one actually costs 4 morale. This one costs 7 morale, for instance. We're back at the Treasury. Issuing war bonds to gain $800,000. Well, this costs 25 victory points. We're only having 50, and we're only gaining 39 a turn. You have to gauge, whether that makes it worth it or not. Taxes, if we raise taxes, that goes against your national morale instead of against your victory points. Paper money, that's just a excuse me, that's just an inflation hit. Move the national capital. That's one of the options we could do. See here, it costs 10 morale to move the national capital from Washington to New York City. But should we lose Washington, that would give us that 50 hit that we saw over here. So while having a 10 morale hit on this is pretty steep, it's better than the 50 that we would lose, because essentially that would end the game for us. So if we thought we were going to lose Washington, that's definitely something we would consider doing. Is there anything else on these? I think that's it. That is the national morale, victory points, and foreign intervention. So now I think we should look at the overall strategy. Look at each theater and see kind of what are excuse me, what are our considerations that we're going to need to keep in mind for the next several turns, and what are we going to do. So I'm going to hit the military control tab or overlay, and we'll take a look at what we're going to do. As I said earlier, we're going to take McDowell into Manassas because that's, in my opinion, how the war should start. We'll actually just do that. I think I had done it prior, but I've turned it off, and I'm going to put him on an offensive posture. Now this is the thing that with the activation rule that I talked about in episode 1. This little envelope off to the side here is open when you're activated, and it's closed when you're not. It's a little graphical symbol to show whether or not your leader is activated or not. Now in using the basic rules, if you're not activated, if your little envelope symbol is not open, you're not allowed to set a unit to an offensive posture. You can only put them in defensive or passive. So in this sense, we're taking McDowell, we're putting him on an offensive posture and sending him into enemy territory. Now if he actually doesn't get activated this turn, he won't be allowed to do that. But I believe that McDowell is automatically activated for the first few turns due to scripted events, just so that you can do such a thing. Okay. Oh, excuse me. Okay, so we're going to put him in here. Now, historically, the situation was McDowell was going to go attack Beauregard in Manassas, and we didn't want Johnston up here in the valley to reinforce him. So it was Patterson's job to occupy Johnston so that he doesn't come down here and join Beauregard. And that's what we're going to do here just for our first turn. It's not going to have that effect because we're not going to be able to get to him so much, but I just like to start that way because it seems right to me. And then after things don't work out that way, we'll start deciding something else to do. Okay, so Patterson over here, he's a 3-star general and a 1-star general, so we should have 12, 16 command points, and again we are a independent stack, so that'll be halved, so we should have 8. Oops, why you only have 7? Why is that? Well, let's look at Patterson over here. He's got one of these abilities, overcautious. This leader is extremely cautious and will often act slowly if not in friendly territory. -1 combat point modifier to his stack, and he will be inactive if he rolls a % die higher than current military control. This applies if the leader is in command of the stack. So, for instance, the deeper, the greater the control, what is it, the military control. So as long as he is in an area that we have military control over, he'll be fine. But as we get into an area that we don't, he's going to be inactive. He's very likely to become active. That's because of this ability. And it doesn't really matter because he gets sacked right after turn 1, and we never have to deal with him other than this single turn. So this is another situation where the forces that were nominally part of his command are in separate stacks. I'm going to just stick them into his stacks just to make things easier. We do have that 35% penalty, but I'm willing to deal with that at this point because all I'm going to do with Patterson is bring him into Harper's Ferry. We're going to put him on an offensive posture, which may or may not happen. In fact, his command rating is a 1, which means the odds of him actually being activated are quite low. But I'm not going to look at their command ratings as much as I can. I'm certainly going to try to not let those drive my decision making, because in real life, generals don't have their ability values tattooed on their foreheads for you to tell how good they are at a glance. We're going to go by their performance. If I have a guy that has poor stats and he's performing the job I need him to do, I'm going to keep him in command. All right, if we look at Patterson here, he's moving to Harper's Ferry, and it's going to take 21 days for him to get there. This is just marching. You can see that as he follows each of his path, he'll say here it takes him 9 days to get to Fulton here, and then 21 days to get to here. And the color of the line here will tell you whether he's moving overland or crossing a river or whatnot. So we have this guy. This is an overland march, and this is crossing the river because it's blue. If you hover your cursor over a region and then hold down the shift key, you can see which regions you can reach from there and whether or not they're an overland route or crossing a river, which can be pretty handy if you want to figure out, well, can Harper's Ferry, who can get to this one? Can you get from Winchester to Loudon here? And yes, you can. These two regions are connected from that blue line there. So we can see that he's got a river crossing here, and that's something to keep in mind if this was to be occupied by Confederate troops. We don't want, or it's not that we don't want to cross the river, it's that that may not be a choice that we have, but we need to understand that there will be some combat penalties should we do. Well, 21 days is not going to get Patterson here in time to do much of anything to stop Johnson. So what we're going to do, using this first tab here, we're going to put him on rail move. And so he's actually going to use this railroad. And this railroad, as you can see, this is under the Confederacy. These regions are controlled by the Confederacy. So why is he able to railroad through there? Well, if you look at the military control here, he's only got a 75% military control in here, and you have to have greater than 75 military control over a region to prevent the other side from using the railroads. I believe that's the value. Anyway, so we're going to use these railroads and take Patterson to Harper's Ferry in 4 days. And with Johnston 2 regions away, he's not going to get here before we are. Likely, depending. We could be delayed before we start off, so it very well could be. But that's where Johnson's going to be. So that's basically what we're looking at for the first, for our first turn for the East as our actual combat moves are going to be. We're going to do some moving up of various forces that happen to be active this turn in the rear, but we're going to skip on. We're going to skip over them for now and look at what we're going to do in West Virginia. We're going to come back to the supply overlay here so we can really kind of remind ourselves what's going on here. John B. Floyd here, he's in a situation where he he cannot supply himself here. He's brought his supply with him, so he'll be okay for a few turns, but he doesn't have any way to get more supply moved to this unit other than to bring more supply wagons with him. So I think this situation for this guy is not strong. He's not going to stay here. Well, he shouldn't if he's smart. But we're gonna want to encourage this guy to leave. We want him to retreat out of here, because if you look at the terrain overlay here, the terrain is pretty rough here. And the amount of force we would need to get him out of here is pretty high, because he's in hills and across rivers. So he's going to be pretty good on defense here. So I don't really want to put a large amount of force into this area. So I'm more than happy for him to just leave. So we're going to position forces to encourage Floyd to leave here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the wheeling force under Blinker here, and I'm going to move him down to here, and we'll put him with rail move so he gets there a little quicker. I'm going to set him to offensive on the off chance that Floyd tries to go one way or the other. I don't think it's likely. I think it's more likely that he goes after Morgantown here. But if he does, we want to attack him. Well, I don't know if we want to attack him or defend. That's a good point there. I was thinking more breakout rather than a combat situation. I'm going to leave these guys on this, so we'll see what happens. What else is going on over here? Here's a unit down in Ashland, Ohio. Lawrence, Ohio is the region. Ashland is the town. Now this guy has his red bar up here. You can see that's only at half, basically at halfway here. So if we look down here, the 1st Michigan Brigade here is actually missing one of its regiments. You can tell by this white chevron. These chevrons along the side tell how many elements, how many regiments are going to be in this unit. And we have 2 black ones and 1 white one. If we look over here, we see we have two conscript regiments. So this guy can be reinforced with his missing 3rd regiment. It could be added to him. In order for that to happen, though, he has to remain unmoving. And I believe with the supply rules we're using, or the attrition rules, he also has to be in a depot. So if we're going to get this other regiment added to this guy, he has to remain unmoving in a depot, and he already is in a depot. So we're just going to leave him here and see if that regiment comes back. It's not automatic, so it might happen, it might not.